What little disgusting secret do you have that you can share? Let's dive in. Story 1. Years ago on Father's Day, I bought a gift bag for the presents I got my dad. The bag had a childlike drawing on it of a dad and kids sitting on a cliff with the words, "Dads rock," written in handwriting that looked a lot like mine. As a joke, I crossed out the artist's name and wrote my own. The day after, my dad called me while I was at my mom's place. He said he had been digging through the trash looking for lost mail when he came across the bag again. He hadn't noticed the signature before and was touched that I had drawn it myself. For some reason, I just went with it and said I had. He was so proud that he had it framed and even made a second copy to put on the fridge. That drawing has now been displayed for 9 years, and he brags about it to guests all the time. To this day, my biggest fear is someone recognizing the original art from a gift bag at Target. Story 2. This one's not mine. It's about my best friend from high school. For some strange reason, he believed that if he didn't poop, his body would just absorb all the waste and convert it into energy. The first few days were painful, but he held everything in. After about a week, the discomfort faded. Then one day, we were having hot dogs at Costco when I noticed him make a face like he was in agony. He said he needed the bathroom and would meet me outside. That's when things took a wild turn. He realized his experiment had failed, and he needed to go badly. He got to the stall, but things didn't go smoothly. The poop had hardened inside him and grew too wide to pass. It basically turned into a reverse plug. In desperation, he crab-walked to the sink, took the mirror off the wall, set it on the floor, wrapped his hands in toilet paper, squatted, and used a mix of pushing and pulling to remove the blockage. He passed out from the strain. After waiting nearly an hour, I told Costco staff something might be wrong. We opened the restroom door to find him unconscious, pants down, blood and mess everywhere. Paramedics were called. He got stitches and had to explain everything to the staff, doctors, and his parents. When people asked why he missed school, I covered for him and made up a story about us getting drunk and him falling from a tree. This is the first time I've ever told the real version. Story 3. When my grandmother was a teen, she and her mother hid 5 Jewish individuals during a dark time in history. Later, the resistance dropped off another dozen or so children. Among them was a 12-year-old boy, the only male in the group. Unfortunately, he turned out to be aggressive. He hit the girls, stole food, and constantly threatened to report my grandmother to the authorities. His threats escalated, from wanting more food to eventually demanding a suit. That was the final straw. My grandmother ended up killing him, possibly thinking she was protecting the others. But the girls ran away and many didn't survive. Only a few made it through the war. In the end, Grandma's choice didn't really help. This story still makes me feel sick. Story 4. When I was 15, I had an online boyfriend who was around 13. He used to call me late at night asking for flirty chats. This was back when long-distance calls were pricey. He once said his mom was getting surgery, so he might not be able to call much. Then, one day I got a call midday from his number. It was his mother yelling. She wanted to know which of her sons had been calling me and said she was staring down a huge phone bill with surgery the next day. I admitted it was Justin. She calmed down a bit but told me never to speak to her sons again. They lost phone and internet access after that, and I never saw them online again. I still feel bad. I hope everything turned out okay for them. Story 5. Once, I had a breast infection while breastfeeding that took a long time to diagnose and treat. I'd already been on antibiotics, but the infection didn't go away. I stopped breastfeeding and one side was fine, but the other side became extremely painful and swollen. I had a small pimple-like bump, so I sterilized a needle and poked it. The skin was thin like a blister, and about 2 cups of pus poured out. Instant relief. I slept great that night. I skipped my scheduled ultrasound the next day because I didn't have insurance and it would have been too expensive. When I called to cancel, the doctor was really upset. That was years ago. I'm okay now. Story 6. About 10 years ago, I got a job at a well-known consulting firm. I came from a small southern town, and I didn't exactly fit in with the more polished crowd there. A few months in, the senior partner threw a Christmas party. That Friday, I met some coworkers for lunch at a pub and had a Philly cheesesteak with a pint of Guinness. Bad decision number 1. The party started at 4 p.m., and since I lived 87 miles away, I couldn't go home first. I waited a bit, then drove straight to the party. I showed up at this massive house in my old, beat-up truck and parked right near the front door. Mistake number 2. I rang the bell and realized I was the first to arrive. Even worse, the valet hadn't shown up yet. Awkward. About 30 minutes later, people started arriving, and I began to relax. Then the food came out. There was everything. Pad thai, meatballs, caviar, smoked salmon, wings, you name it. I had a bit of it all on top of my earlier cheesesteak and Guinness. Add 3 glasses of wine to the mix, and I was in serious digestive distress. I found the only guest bathroom, which unfortunately was in a small alcove just off the main sitting room. I squeezed past a partner and his wife to get in. It wasn't pretty, but I managed a relatively clean escape. The smell was semi-contained. Just as I left the bathroom, the same couple was still there. I tried to act normal and moved into another room. Relieved. A few minutes later, one of the firm's partners arrived with his kids. His youngest made a beeline for me and climbed into my lap. We'd never met, so it was awkward. I asked, "How old is she?" Mistake number 3. "He's 3, the partner replied. My stomach turned again. I let out a quiet but deadly fart. The child loudly announced, "Ooh, you farted," loud enough for the whole room to hear. Mortified, I made my way back to the bathroom. The couple was still there. I didn't even try to apologize this time. Round 2 was catastrophic. I emerged sweaty, humiliated, and very aware of the terrible smell I was dragging around with me. As I walked through the house, everyone seemed to be staring at me. I nodded politely and made my exit. My old truck was still right in front, the valet giving me a look of pure judgment. As I drove away, my stomach rumbled again. I barely made it to a truck stop 10 miles down the highway, where I had what felt like the final explosion of my intestinal apocalypse. When I came out, 5 truckers gave me a round of applause. At least somebody appreciated my struggle. Story 7. I've never told anyone this, but I need to get it off my chest. My fiancé works evenings, and I work during the day, so we don't see much of each other. After feeding and walking the dog, I usually head to the basement to unwind. I haven't been keeping the space very clean. There are some dirty clothes and empty cans. It looks like a stereotypical bachelor's den. I also haven't been getting much intimacy lately. One night, I turned on a relaxing playlist, opened a private browser window, and went to a certain adult website. I can't remember what I watched, but I know I spent a long time browsing and building up to what I thought would be an epic finish. When I was ready, I looked around for something to clean up with and spotted a black sock nearby. Not ideal, but it'll do. I used it, but something felt weird, like the fabric was shifting. Still, I was too focused to care. Then I saw it. An earwig crawling out of the sock. Onto me. I panicked, threw the sock, and another earwig darted out. I swatted at it, which meant I was basically slapping myself. I screamed and ran into the other room. After checking that everything was bug-free, I carefully turned the sock inside out. For more earwigs scrambled out. Took me 6 months to feel normal again, and even now I only use tissues. Socks are forever off the table. Story 8. I've never shared this before. One day, while browsing a strange part of the internet, I stumbled upon a blog where a woman claimed to have intimate experiences with her dog. I kept reading out of morbid curiosity, even watching a video. I was horrified to find myself aroused by the idea of a large dog being with a woman. That realization hit me like a brick. I closed everything, cleared my history, and felt sick to my stomach. Another thing I've never told anyone. I fantasize about my boyfriend being a bit rougher in bed, like holding my head and thrusting while I lie on my back. I hinted at it once, but he didn't seem interested, so I never brought it up again. I still feel so ashamed about the dog thing. I've never told a soul until now. Story 9. I love my oldest daughter. I always will, but I don't like her. She's the most toxic person I've ever known. Dramatic, dishonest, manipulative. She spreads lies about the family and makes choices that negatively impact everyone. No one in the family is like her. One by one, we've all pulled away. Her aunts, uncles, cousins, they've all cut her off. Even her siblings want nothing to do with her. Her father is confused and frustrated. I was the only one still trying. But she finally crossed a line. I can't even bring myself to tell her I'm done. I'm afraid of her. She genuinely scares me now. Story 10. When I was around 10, I had a bunk bed I shared with my little sister. It was made of hollow metal tubes capped with plastic. One day, I had a strange thought. What if I pooped into the hollow frame? I tried it, but the sharp edges hurt. So I used plastic dog bags, waited for the poop to drop, grabbed it, and stuffed it inside the bed frame, without the bag, to avoid anyone noticing missing ones. I kept doing this for a while. By the time we were moving houses, the bed's frame tubes were about 3/4 full. My heart dropped as my dad lifted the frame and flipped it to move it. A horrifying pile of poop poured out onto the carpet. The next week, a nurse visited my school to assess me and suggested I might have autism. It's been years, and my life is still a bit of a mess. Story 11. This isn't gross or anything, but it's a secret I've never told anyone. During my first year of college, I met this girl. Not conventionally hot, but really pretty in a sweet way. She told me her name, but I forgot it almost instantly. All I remembered was the first few letters and that we shared one class. I checked the class roster online, looked up similar names on Facebook, and found her. I learned her full name and accidentally memorized it. Then I went full detective. Found her old YouTube channel, linked that to her Twitter, and from there discovered her gaming handle. She used to have a decent Twitch following and was really into Minecraft. She also had an odd online friendship with an older guy when she was younger. I found all of this just days after meeting her. Later, I asked for her number and casually brought up a game I knew she liked. We became good friends, though she never liked me that way. She did mention me on her stream once or twice in passing. I always thought it was funny how she never knew I had reverse-engineered her entire digital presence just to get to know her better. It wasn't meant to be creepy. I just got carried away trying to remember her name. Story 12. This one's not mine, but it's a story from my brother's high school. One day, someone pooped right in the middle of an empty classroom. The next day, the teacher was furious and demanded that the person responsible confess. He threatened to hit everyone's hands 30 times with a stick if nobody came forward. So, the students lined up for punishment. Some got hit on the back or legs if they moved their hands away. When it was the actual culprit's turn, he asked, "If I clean it up, will I still get hit?" The teacher said, "Yes, but only 5 times." Without hesitation, the student tore a sheet from his notebook, picked up the poop with it, and threw it at the teacher's face, shouting, "How's that for a confession?" The teacher blocked it with his stick, but chaos erupted. That's when the janitor and the principal walked in, just in time to see the teacher with mess on his face swinging a stick wildly while students tried to flee the room. The student got a nosebleed and probably some bruises. He was expelled, and the teacher took a few weeks off. My brother said it was the most outrageous thing he'd ever seen in school. Story 13. My first college roommates were total slobs. They'd leave laundry and leftover seafood boils rotting in the sink or on the living room floor for days. I once found half-eaten hot dogs shoved into the couch. Then they found 2 stray pit bull puppies and brought them home. Soon, the apartment was overrun with fleas. I couldn't sleep without waking up to bite marks and had to pop fleas between my fingernails every night. It was like a horror movie. One morning, I stepped barefoot into dog poop in the hallway. That was it. I had enough. I decided to get revenge. I hit up a sketchy Chinese buffet, ate way too much, then topped it off with Fruity Pebbles, knowing full well I was lactose intolerant. After about an hour, my stomach was a volcano. I left a steaming mess on both of their beds, right on the pillows and mattresses. When they found it and blamed the dogs, their screams were like music to my ears. That moment was more satisfying than anything else I've ever done. Story 14. I honestly think I could have become someone really dangerous when I was younger. I was bullied a lot in school, especially middle school, and developed a huge victim complex and paranoia. Because I was bigger than most kids, teachers often saw me as the aggressor, even when I was being picked on. The verbal abuse hardened me. I'd get into fights, curse a lot, and say things I probably shouldn't have. Eventually, I started analyzing people just to find flaws and imagined how I'd punish them. I had violent outbursts and I hurt people. But then something unexpected happened. A girl went out of her way to be nice to me. She was genuinely kind, and for the first time I realized not everyone was out to hurt me. I developed feelings for her, and even though it didn't work out romantically, her compassion helped change the course of my life. I still think about her sometimes, and how she helped me become a better person. Story 15. One time, I accidentally threw leftover chicken and spaghetti meat sauce through my neighbor's window. My mom had told me to toss the food scraps behind the garage for the local animals, but I didn't feel like putting shoes on. Instead, I stood on the back porch and chucked it as hard as I could. What I didn't know was that a piece of foil buried under the sauce was holding a big chicken breast. I threw the whole thing with all my strength. I heard a crash, glass breaking. Instant panic. I tiptoed back into the house like a cartoon character, shut off all the lights, and laid flat on the living room floor. My neighbors noticed and called the police, but no one ever figured out it was me. I was 20 years old when this happened. Story 16. Back in college, I lived in a dorm suite with 4 other guys. Each of us had our own rooms, but the walls were super thin so we could hear everything, including, unfortunately, any private moments. At the time, I was dating a girl who later cheated on me with one of my roommates. Turns out, they had been emotionally involved for a while before it became physical. After we broke up, a mutual friend told me that my roommate had actually been pleasuring himself to the sounds of me and my ex for months. I decided to get a little revenge. There was a shared shower we all used, and this guy always left his shampoo bottle in the little side room next to the shower, unlike the rest of us who brought our stuff back to our rooms. One day, I poured out half of his shampoo and filled it back up with pee. Gave it a good shake. The next day, he and my ex showered together using that very bottle. I kept topping it off for months, right up until the day he graduated. He never found out. Story 17. When I was 9, everything fell apart. I suffered serious trauma, both emotionally and physically. At the same time, I started losing my hearing, first in one ear, then partially in the other. I also developed PTSD, depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety attacks, and a sensory processing issue. Sometimes light, smell, or even touch would overwhelm me completely. I had a head injury that made my memory poor, and eventually diabetes that caused nerve damage. I started losing sensation in parts of my body. Doctors aren't sure exactly what's causing everything, but it makes basic daily functioning incredibly difficult. The one thing that helps emotionally and physically is wearing adult diapers. I know it might sound strange, but for me, it's not about anything weird. They just make me feel safe, supported, like I'm not on the edge of panic. When I don't have any, I start to spiral. I feel completely unstable, lost. I know it's hard for people to understand, but this isn't about a fetish. It's about comfort and survival. Right now, I don't have any diapers, and I probably won't for a while. And I'm not okay. Story 18. This one makes my skin crawl. When I was in middle school, I had a really weird habit. I saved pictures of girls from school that I thought were pretty. I'd go through their MySpace or Facebook profiles, downloading their photos and organizing them into folders named after each girl. I had over 40 folders and thousands of pictures. It became this secret compulsion. At the time, I didn't even think about how creepy it was. Felt like a hobby. But now, I look back and feel absolutely awful. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone who I had a folder for and I'll remember, and it just fills me with guilt and shame. I never showed anyone the pictures or did anything with them. But still, the fact that I even had them makes me feel sick. Story 19. When I was in junior high, I found a videotape of my dad dressed in my graduation dress, full-on cross-dressing. It shocked me. My dad had always been the manly sports coach type. I'd never seen any hint of this side of him before. I didn't say anything. Years later, decades actually, he gave me a CD of family photos. He hadn't checked it before handing it over, and unfortunately, it had more pictures. this time showing him in women's clothing, including some very personal images I can't unsee. I gave the CD back and told him to be careful about what he shared with people. He never brought it up, and neither did I. Honestly, I'm open-minded. It's not the cross-dressing itself that unsettled me. It's just that it was my dad, and it came out of nowhere. He and my mom have been married for 60-plus years. I sometimes wonder if she knew. But now she has Alzheimer's, so I'll probably never find out. I just hope he keeps that side of his life private. I'd hate for someone else in the family to accidentally stumble upon it. Story 20. In 5th grade, I really had to go to the bathroom during class. My teacher let me go, but when I got there, nothing happened. I came back, but within minutes, I needed to go again. Urgently. I raised my hand, but the teacher refused, thinking I was messing around. That's when it started. I stood up and clenched, pretending to go to the classroom water fountain. The movement caused it to slip. The poop slid down the back of my pants and got caught in the leg of my jeans. I thought I was in the clear until someone said, "There's poop under his shoe." I looked down and realized that a chunk had fallen out and was now smeared into the carpet. Some kids noticed more little bits near the fountain. I panicked and said it must have been dog poop from outside. Amazingly, people believed me, even when they joked and sang, "Roll, roll, roll, keep on rolling." I just played along. When the teacher called the janitor, I saw the look she gave me. She didn't say anything, but she knew. Story 21. When I was a kid, maybe around 10, I was obsessed with Pokemon Red. I didn't have many friends who were into it, and the neighborhood was mostly older folks. But there was this one kid, a little younger than me, who got Pokemon Blue. He was so excited because it was his first game and the opposite version of mine. One day I was hanging out at his house. He got up to use the bathroom, and I saw his game cartridge on the shelf. Without thinking, I slipped it into my pocket and left shortly after. He was devastated when he couldn't find it. His family didn't have much money, so they couldn't replace it. I already had 2 copies of Pokemon Red. I didn't need that game, I just took it. I've kept it all these years, and it still makes me feel awful when I think about it. Story 22. When I was a teenager, I had to pee really badly one night. I was in the basement, and I didn't want to go upstairs and risk waking everyone. The basement bathroom scared me because I'd seen spiders in there. I spotted an empty soda bottle and decided to use that. Afterward, I realized it didn't have a lid, so I hid it in a trash bin and figured I'd dump it out later. Then I forgot all about it. A couple of days later, my mom was cleaning the basement. The bottle had tipped over, and she got splashed with it. "Is this pee?" she asked. In a panic, I lied and blamed my friend Colin, saying he must have peed in it. My mom believed me. Colin wasn't allowed over anymore, and kids at school teased him. To this day, I still feel guilty. Sorry, Colin. Story 23. Back when I lived with my family, my little brother and I shared a bathroom. His facial hair grows faster than mine, so he had to shave every morning. Whenever he annoyed me, like turning off my Xbox, tattling to our parents, or just being a classic little brother, I'd sneak into the bathroom and use his electric razor to shave my privates. And not just a touch-up, I mean everything, including the difficult areas. He never found out. Even now, when I visit and he starts acting up, I sometimes still give myself a quick trim with his razor. It's petty, I know, but it makes me laugh. Story 24. I've always been a bit of a passive-aggressive prankster. Back in college, I lived with my brother and his wife. I rented a tiny bedroom that used to be part of a spare bathroom. They decided to get 2 Bengal cats and put the litter box, a high-tech cat genie, in my bathroom. It was supposed to clean itself using heated water and plastic pellets. But in reality, it barely worked. It missed half the waste, which would then get cooked and stirred like some kind of horror soup. The smell was unbearable. The plastic pellets would stick to your feet and spread around the house. So, I started scooping up the pellets and secretly sprinkling them everywhere. In their bed, their shoes, their shower, even in their car. They were baffled for months and eventually moved the litter box. Only my wife knows the truth now. My brother may suspect something, but it's such a weird prank that I doubt he'd ever guess what really happened. Story 25. I've never shared this with anyone. Basically, I had two families growing up. When I was very young, something serious happened that I don't fully remember. My biological father took me out one day and was killed. The man who did it, Garen, ended up raising me as his own. With Garen, I had 4 siblings. My older brother Alexander didn't like how Garen ran the house, but dealt with it. Camila, my older sister, had been through trauma herself, so she tried to protect and care for all of us, sometimes a bit too much. Leon, my younger brother, was sarcastic but harmless. And Elise, the youngest, was always full of joy and often ran off into the city. I wasn't allowed outside much unless I was with Alexander or Camila. Eventually, Alexander convinced Garen to let me go out alone. The first time I did, I was spotted in a supermarket by my real mother and my biological siblings, and that's how I was reunited with my original family. Very few people know this. Only a few friends from Garen's household are aware. I spent about 15 years with him before returning to where I was born. Story 26. This happened not too long ago. After a night of heavy drinking, I woke up needing to pee badly. I ran to the bathroom, only to find my roommate already in the shower. I danced around my room trying to hold it in, hoping he'd finish soon. That's when I saw a big soda cup from the day before sitting on my nightstand. It still had some liquid in it, so I tried pouring it out the window, but it spilled everywhere. Out of time, I placed a towel on the floor, put the cup down, aimed, and hoped for the best. I nearly filled the whole thing and felt a wave of relief wash over me. Then came the problem. What to do with it? I snapped the lid back on, made it look like a regular soda, and rushed to the kitchen to dump it down the sink before my roommate got out. Smelled awful. Leftover beer pee is no joke. I thought about telling him later because it was kind of funny in hindsight, but nope, this one's staying a secret. Story 27. During high school graduation season, my family threw a party. My aunt and uncle offered to lend us some folding chairs, and my uncle agreed to meet me halfway to drop them off. I had been living on a steady diet of Natty Light and Taco Bell, so my stomach wasn't in great shape. As I waited in the park and ride lot in my car, wearing basketball shorts and boxers, I thought I could sneak out a small fart. Big mistake. Instant regret. It wasn't just a fart. I looked down, realized I'd soiled myself, and started panicking. No napkins, no extra clothes. I peeled off the messy boxers and tossed them out the window. I tried to redress without making it worse, then drove to the nearest gas station to clean up. Later, when my uncle arrived, he parked right next to the spot where I had thrown the boxers. He looked down and said, "Ugh, someone had a rough time." I just nodded along and pretended I was disgusted too. He still tells that story and has no idea it was me. Story 28. I'm a mostly straight guy, but I've always been a little curious. I had a huge crush on a girl I worked with, but it never turned into anything. She had a group of friends, some of whom were attractive too. Eventually, I was introduced to their male friend. I'd seen him online but never met him before. When we shook hands, I felt something, a little spark. Later, during a night out, he brushed my chest as we said goodbye. Felt intentional. Fast forward a bit. After another night out, it ended up just being the two of us. We'd had a lot to drink, and there was some definite tension. I flirted. He flirted back. Eventually, we ended up back at my hotel room. That night was my first time being with a guy. I was surprised at how natural and comfortable it felt. We hooked up a few more times after that before deciding to leave it in the past. He's now in a relationship and I'm single. We're still friends. No one else knows. It was just a private, respectful connection that helped me understand myself better. Story 29. This was back in college when I was having a rough time and seeing a therapist who worked out of her house. I usually took the bus to her neighborhood and walked the rest of the way. One day I got there early and really needed to pee. I didn't want to ask to use her bathroom early, especially if she was still with another client. So, in a panic, I ran around to her backyard and peed in a potted plant. Afterward, I knocked on the door, only to find out I didn't even have an appointment that day. She apologized, saying my insurance had messed something up and she actually owed me money. She handed me a wad of cash, around $100, and sent me on my way. So basically, I got paid $100 for peeing in my therapist's yard. Story 31. When I was in my early 20s, I decided to try LSD for the first time. I bought a decent amount from a friend and flew to Ireland to visit another buddy who was living there for a while. We decided to trip together in a small town. It started out fine. Classic visuals, colors, textures, the usual cool stuff. But at some point I blacked out. When I came to, I realized my friend was in the middle of a full-blown bad trip. He was running up and down the stairs of our hostel yelling things like, "You're God, and I don't want to be the devil." People in the hostel started waking up. One woman was surprisingly understanding and tried to help me calm him down. But that only made things worse. He was spiraling. Later, he told me he couldn't understand how I was holding it together while he was melting down. Truth is, I was tripping hard too. I just managed to stay composed. Eventually, the hostel owner arrived and turned on the hallway light. I swear, he looked exactly like Jesus. That moment actually calmed my friend for a bit. I stepped outside to smoke with one of the guests we'd woken up, but then we heard a crash and the front door slam. He had run off. He was missing for about an hour. I was outside, panicked, when he suddenly appeared, climbing over the back wall, shirtless, looking a little calmer. He asked if we could just go to bed. The next morning, I went out for a walk and found his sweatshirt, lying in a dried puddle of blood. I never asked him what happened that night. We only hung out once more after that, and I couldn't bring myself to bring it up. Story 32. One night, I was drinking with a friend and his girlfriend, who was his girlfriend at the time but later became his ex. We were just hanging out, having beers, but she was hitting vodka hard, straight from the bottle. As the night went on, she started making some strange confessions. First, she told us about a time in high school when she had a huge fight with her quarterback boyfriend the night before a game. Out of spite, she found the opposing team's quarterback after practice and hooked up with him behind the bleachers. Then she told her boyfriend right before the game. It got weirder. She said that when she was younger, she used to dress her little sister in their mom's bras and underwear, tying the sides to make them fit. They had a pole in their basement. Not a real stripper pole, but something close. And she would teach her sister to dance on it in front of her friends, even some boys. She made a point to say no one ever touched her sister, that it was just funny. But she also said her sister was around 3 or 4 years old at the time. She was really drunk and known for exaggerating, so part of me still wonders if any of it was even true. Still, it stuck with me. Story 33. Back in 8th grade, during a school retreat, I had one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. We had a big dinner, steak and pork chops, and I finished mine and a few portions from some girls at the table who didn't want theirs. Later that night, we had a really emotional session where people opened up and cried. We went to bed late, around midnight. At about 3:30 a.m., I felt a terrible rumbling in my stomach. The air conditioning was blasting and the room was freezing. I thought I could wait it out, but it got worse fast. I rushed to the door, but it was jammed. While I was trying to open it, I didn't even realize my body had already started letting go. I finally got out and sprinted to the bathroom, but by then, it was too late. I had already left a trail behind me. I panicked, snuck back to the room, and changed as quickly as I could, stuffing my stained underwear into the bottom of my bag. The next day, the teachers found the mess and blamed it on the seniors. No one ever found out it was me, but I've never forgotten it. Story 34. I've got a lot of secrets. Some are small, some not so small. Sometimes I feel like a monster. One of the smaller ones. I still eat my boogers. I started as a kid, got yelled at for it and just got sneakier. Now I'm a grown man, and I still do it. Another secret. I don't find my girlfriend attractive anymore. I love her, but she's gained weight and her breasts sag more than I'm comfortable with. I have a thing for perky ones, big or small, just not saggy. I'd never ask her to change, though. I also obsess over breasts in general. It's not just something I enjoy, it's a fixation. I mentally undress women constantly, even teenagers and moms on the street. Most of my female coworkers have probably been imagined by me in some way. Sometimes, I even sneak into the office bathroom to relieve myself. I've fantasized about doing it at someone's desk, though I've never gone that far. And here's the part one hate most. I sometimes lose control and lightly hit or squeeze one of my cats when it annoys me. Nothing major, but it makes me feel awful. He always comes back to sit in my lap, and it makes me hate myself even more. I worry that if I ever have kids, I might hurt them too. That thought terrifies me, but I don't know how to ask for help. Story 35. My best friend has 3 female cousins. The oldest one, who's the same age as me, and I started texting and getting close. At the time, she was dating one of our mutual friends. One night, while he was away and we were all at a party, she and I hooked up. We never spoke about it again, and nobody ever found out. A year later, we had another party, this time at my parents' house. The youngest cousin, who was 19 at the time, I was 25, was there too. I thought she had left with her boyfriend, but when I went to bed, she was already there, completely naked, waiting for me. We hooked up that night and continued seeing each other secretly for a couple of months. She claimed her boyfriend wasn't giving her the emotional attention she needed. The wild part? The cousin I really wanted the most was the middle sister, and she's the only one I never got with. To this day, none of them know what happened between me and the others, and I plan to keep it that way. Story 36. When I was 15, I got super drunk for the first time with a group of friends. We were hanging out in a forest clearing behind someone's mom's house. The parents were gone and we were drinking straight vodka. None of us knew our limits. The last thing I remember was us heading back toward the house. Everyone laughing, yelling, stumbling. The next morning, I woke up on a cot in the hallway, fully clothed, but with dried, crusty diarrhea covering my underwear, crotch, and even the back of my shirt. I heard my friend's brother playing video games down the hall and his mom downstairs. The horror hit me in waves. I tiptoed to the bathroom, stripped, and found a plastic bag under the sink. I wrapped up my ruined underwear and hid them deep in the bathroom trash. Miraculously, my jeans weren't stained on the outside, and my shirt was black, so the mess wasn't visible. I left the dirty sheets on the cot and just got out of there. But as soon as I walked into the kitchen, my friend shouted, "Hey, pants!" His mom chimed in too. "Tie pants! Tie pants!" Making fun of me using a nickname I never heard before. I left humiliated. I stayed away for about a month, but eventually visited again, hoping it had blown over. It hadn't. They mocked me relentlessly, and I lost it, cussed them out and left. A year later, I visited them in their new city. We dropped acid together, and during the trip, they finally told me what really happened. Apparently, on the walk back to the house that night, I pulled down my pants in the woods and squatted. I pooped right there on the ground. While I was pulling my pants back up, my buddy nudged me, and I fell backward, straight into it. Then I just pulled my pants all the way up and kept walking like nothing happened. Honestly, that revelation made me feel a little better. Story 37. When I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I visited the Philippines with my family. I've always had a phobia of public restrooms, especially for doing number 2, and that trip didn't help. One day, we went to a not-too-busy water park. While swimming, I felt a serious urge to go. I tried using the park bathroom, but it was absolutely disgusting. I just couldn't do it. So, I made a dumb decision. I found a corner of one of the pools where no one could see me and relieved myself. The poop floated right to the top. I panicked and swam away fast. My older brother was pulling me around in an inflatable tube when he spotted what he thought was a piece of wood. As he got closer, he realized what it was and freaked out. He told my mom, and my uncle overheard. He got furious and called the staff over. A worker came with one of those long pool nets, scooped out my little disaster, tossed it into the grass, and sprinkled chlorine around the pool. No one ever found out it was me. I still haven't told them. Story 38. This one's hard to talk about. When I was about 11, I found my dad's hidden stash of adult magazines in the basement. That's not too surprising, a lot of dads have that. But that's not the story. I started getting curious and would look through them when no one was around. Eventually, I started stealing some of them and hiding them in a box under my bed. One day, I found a really old magazine tucked behind others, different from the rest. The images were extreme and disturbing. At that age, I didn't fully understand what I was seeing, but I knew it was wrong. I felt sick. I never told anyone. I destroyed the magazine and stopped going through the stash altogether. To this day, I've never been able to shake how disturbing it was, and what it made me wonder about my dad. Story 39. When I was in middle school, I was bullied constantly. I was quiet, introverted, and didn't really fit in. I also had some health issues that made me different. One day, I was in the school locker room, getting changed after gym class, when one of the more popular kids shoved me into a locker while everyone laughed. I hit my head hard and started crying, and that's when I snapped. I got up, grabbed a metal water bottle, and swung it as hard as I could at the back of the guy's head. He went down. I ran out of the locker room, straight to the principal's office, crying and yelling that I was sorry. They called my parents and the kid's parents. Shockingly, his parents didn't press charges, and the school suspended both of us for 2 weeks. That was the first and only time I ever hurt someone physically. It scared me how easy it was to lose control like that. Story 40. When I was 13, I got into this habit of sneaking into the pantry at night and stealing food. Not because I was starving, but because I just liked the thrill of it. I'd take spoonfuls of frosting, slices of cheese, random snack bars, whatever I could find. One night, I grabbed a jar of peanut butter and went back to my room. I sat on the floor with a spoon, going to town on it while watching YouTube on my tablet. Then I dropped the jar. It landed open side down, straight onto the carpet. Panicked. Instead of cleaning it up like a normal person, I tried scraping the peanut butter into a sock and stuffing the sock into a shoebox under my bed. It stayed there for over a year. I completely forgot about it until my mom started noticing a smell in my room. She searched everywhere until she finally found the moldy sock full of peanut butter. She was horrified. I blamed my little brother and said he must have done it while playing in my room. She believed me. My brother got in trouble. I never told him the truth.